Good, everything's good. Okay, so welcome. My name is Kayla Miner. I am the Environmental and Communications Coordinator at Foothills Forage and Grazing Association. We are located in High River. We are a nonprofit producer-driven group that was formed in 1972 that addresses issues, ideas, and innovations for forage and livestock producers in South and Central Alberta. Some of the things that we do are events, workshops, conferences, webinars like this, field days, demonstration projects. I'm an environmental farm plan technician, so I can help with EFPs. We do producer funding updates like this one, information network, such as our monthly newsletter, our social media platforms. If you wanted to check those out, you could go, it's just Foothills Forage. And then if you would like to become a member, you can just check it out on our website. So those are just a few slides. So we'll start with Fiona talking about the cover crops and rotational grazing categories from the OFCAF. And then if you guys have questions, just put them in the chat and we will ask them at the end. That works. And then Fiona, did you want me to share yours, or you can, I guess? Hey?
Sure, yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If you have it figured out.
Maybe. You can see that?
Yep, perfect. So hi, everybody. I am Fiona Browdy. I'm the OFCAF program manager. I work for RDAR, and we are one of the delivery agents for On-Farm Climate Action Fund. So I just wanted to put up a slide about RDAR in case you don't know who we are and what we do. RDAR stands for Results Driven Agriculture Research. And really it's strategic investments in producer-led research. So when you're looking on our site for OFCAF, I'd just encourage you to have a look around. There's lots of relevant research to producers and particularly livestock. I could highlight a few things, like we have research going on looking at using drones to control Canada thistle and pastures and stuff like that. So just have a look around if you have a minute, because there's lots of interesting research we do besides this program. So what is the On-Farm Climate Action Fund? It's a fund from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and it provides funding and support to farmers to adopt BMPs on their farm. The goal of this is to decrease greenhouse gas emissions, increase the sustainability, efficiency, and resiliency of on-farm operations. RDAR has 3 categories that we're able to fund: nitrogen management, cover crop, and rotational grazing. I'm just going to focus mainly on cover crop and rotational grazing for the audience tonight, although I will pull a couple of highlights out of nitrogen that I think might be relevant to you as well. So some just quick facts for you about the program. So there will be a number of activities to support the adoption of BMPs if you want to learn more. We're working closely with the associations across the province to look at field days, workshops, and peer-to-peer learning. So just watch either your Foothills Forage is probably the place you'll go to find out about local events coming in the winter and next summer. This program operates from July 2022 to March 31st, 2024, and we will deliver this on a case-by-case basis. So we're bound by the program's budget allocation. And so what that means is basically, as we review applications, some BMPs and eligible expenses may be closed as we reach our targeted outcomes. I want to mention there are other OFCAF programs in Alberta. Canadian Canola Council funds nitrogen management. You're going to hear from CFGA, and then EcoCert is also delivering in Alberta, and mainly that's targeted at organic production. Each of those have their own cost shares and requirements, and I just want to emphasize that you need to choose what works best for you. And this is not a competition in any means or manners. So have a look at all the programs, decide what works for you, and then make that decision. And quite frankly, it's a win-win if CFGA and all these other programs basically are fully subscribed in Alberta, because it means all the dollars are on farms. The other point I wanted to make here is that there's no double dipping with other OFCAF programs for the same BMP. So if you're going to use, so for one field of rotational grazing, you cannot use our program and CFGA for the same field. You are eligible to receive funding from us. If you're an active producer, you can demonstrate a minimum of $25,000 of gross farm income, and you're headquartered in Alberta and your land is in Alberta. You must work with a qualified professional. That means a professional agronomist or certified crop advisor, to develop a plan that basically tells us what are you going to do and what are the costs to do those things. You then complete an online application, including this recommended plan from the professional, and you also must provide us permission for post-project inspections. Part of our program is on-farm audits once people are complete, and so that's why we're asking for the post-project inspection permission. Funding details. So you can apply as many times as you want across all these three categories to a combined maximum payment of $75,000. This year it's retroactive to April 1st and it ends again on March 31st. So applicants are eligible for 85% of reimbursement of those expenditures. For our program, you must pay 100% of the upfront costs. We do not have any in-kind allowable income there or payments. So it's 100% of the upfront costs. And then you submit your invoices to us. Our minimum project costs are $2,500 and our maximum again is $75,000. And just wanted to flag for you that these payments will be considered as taxable income. This is what our online system looks like. Just wanted to give you a screenshot of what, when you go online, this is what you're going to find to begin. So how does our application process work? As I talked about, we have this action plan template. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a one-page document that describes what you're going to do, where the fields are, and what practice you're going to use. That has to be recommended by, again, as a P.AG or CCA, and you submit that along with the application. You go online to our online platform, which we call Argo, and then you'll receive approval with your proposed budget and a pre-approved budget. So that means that budget is tied to you and you alone, unless you decide you're going to change that project or not able to complete for some reason. So once you have approval, you're good to go, and we don't allocate that anywhere else. So when you've completed the project, you just submit your invoices. We'll obviously review that against what we've approved, and then funds will be delivered to each applicant. And I'm happy to tell you that we already are delivering funds. We have issued funds already in the last few weeks to applicants who already have implemented their project. I want just to highlight a few things. There's a lot of paperwork in our sub-contribution agreement and stuff. So just want to be really transparent on how this works and some things we're going to ask for. So you need to actually you don't sign it, but you acknowledge an attestation that says you meet the program requirements and you have landowner permission to proceed if you're using rented land. There is a clause about greenhouse gas, and I just want to highlight that for you. So if you are looking at regulatory markets, you are not able to put this land under those markets just for the life of the project. So from the start date to the end date. So if you actually start a project in April and it's done in November, then that's the time it's not eligible. But again, that's only for regulatory markets, not for voluntary, which is what most producers would be in. And if your other parts of your farm are in the voluntary market, it has no impact on that. So it's only on the land you're doing the project for, and only for the length of time that it's active in our system. We ask that you document pre and post project conditions with GPS and date stamp photos, recognizing that if it's retroactive and you've done this, you know, April 15th, that's probably not possible because you probably didn't think to take those pictures. And again, we're going to ask for that permission for post-project inspections. Again, that's just for on-farm audit. If we need to go on there, we want to make sure we've already got that permission in place. Important dates. These are really important. The second one there, so our applications open August 4th. For this year, they close November 7th. So that's a few weeks away. So if you're going to apply, you should probably get started fairly soon to make sure you meet that November 7th deadline. Invoices, if you're approved, have to be submitted January 6th, and then we'll make payments as soon as we can after we get those invoices. And again, this is only for this year's projects. If you want to do work next year, our applications will open on February 13th. So I keep talking about this action plan template, and that always sounds so complicated, but it's quite simple. I think it contains, you can see in the green there, some background, what is an eligible cost and what is not, some resources if you want to learn more information, and we do ask for an air photo attached to each project. So that doesn't have to be Google Earth. If you already have one, GeoDiscover, it doesn't matter to us how you get that air photo. So really that just tells us what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, and what the cost is. So again, a P.AG or CCA must recommend this, and the cost they might charge you to do this plan with them is an eligible cost. However, that cost to develop the plan cannot exceed 10% of the total project cost to a maximum of $2,000. We really wanted the dollars to go on farm, in the ground, and implementation, and so we put a cap on the amount of dollars a P.AG or CCA can charge you to help you. If you don't have a P.AG or CCA that you have a relationship with, we do have a document on our webpage on how to find them. RDAR will not make any specific recommendations for people. That is solely up to the producer or the applicant choice to decide who you might want to work with. And Foothills Forage and other associations are probably a good place to start, I would say, if you're looking for some help there. So cover crop is our first category. We have two main costs here we're going to look at. So any seed costs are eligible, and then planting costs. Again, our program doesn't support in-kind. So your planting costs would have to be custom rates if you have someone come in and do it, or if you need to rent special equipment, we will reimburse that as well. And then the details below kind of describe what a cover crop is. For this BMP, BMPs must be new to the farm or new to that field. So if you planted a cover crop on that field last year, it's not an eligible activity in our program. And I just will add a few things to this slide before we move on. I thought this was going to be quite a simple category, and it seems like it's quite complicated. So a few things I can highlight is silage crop is not considered a cover crop. And so, yeah, we don't consider that. We're looking for a live active root into the winter and to protect that soil into the winter. So it has to be an underseeded crop to a silage crop, or you know, a cocktail type mix of cover crop that will actually be in the ground over winter. One other item there, sorry, I'm just going to mention, you can see, oh gosh, sorry. Sorry about that. You can see that non-marketable crops, so you cannot harvest this crop and market it. That won't be eligible either. So you can graze it, you can bale it, you can put it in a silage pit, but you can't actually market the crop. Okay, you can move on. So this is what our template looks like. Again, it sounds complicated when I talk about it. You can see it's quite simple. We just need to know your name, legal land description, what you're going to do there. So the cover crop area in acres, what's your seeding method, the cost per seed, and then that'll all add up itself to be the cost per field. On part C there, you can see cost of other. That's where you would put the cost if a P.AG or CCA charged you some money. And at the very bottom, you just put the name of the P.AG or CCA and the date they reviewed your plan. So it sounds complicated, it's quite simple. And really, once you get this template done, it makes your online application process go really smoothly. I would say if you have this done, it probably wouldn't take you an hour to do our application based on our feedback. Rotational grazing, this is probably the one most of you are interested in. So we have two real main activities we fund here. One is interior fences. We don't actually fund any perimeter fencing at all. And that can be permanent or temporary. And then we look at water distribution as well. So we don't pay for digging dugouts or drilling wells, but any distribution that can be remote watering systems and shallow buried pipelines. We also look at improving your pasture composition with legumes. That has to be a 50% legume mix if you're going to do that. And because you're extending that grazing season, we want you to know what's in your feed. And so forage testing for the fall or winter is also an eligible cost.
Does that include seed or is that just for the planting?
Note that includes the seed as well.
Okay.
So if you're seeding hay or pasture, increase legumes, we will fund both those things. They're just under different categories there.
Thanks.
You bet. And the last one is nitrogen management. And I'm not going to talk through all this based on the audience and it's Foothills Forage. So I highlighted the two in bold there. You can see it. I thought these might be the ones that people are most interested in. So we look at custom application costs of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer replacements. So manure or compost. This has to be on cultivated land and it cannot have manure on it for the past 10 years, but we pay up to $75 an acre really for the transportation and spreading of manure. And the second one is the question you just asked about, Justin, which is seed and planting cost to increase perennial legumes in rotation. So this would be if you're seeding new hay crops. And the other one I didn't highlight up there, which people might be interested in, is the cost of soil testing. We will fund the cost of soil testing as well. So if you're interested in more in nitrogen, I won't concentrate on that because I think these are mostly livestock and forage people, but there are other activities under nitrogen as well. We have some cost limits. So we do not have a custom rate guide in Alberta. So we base this on Saskatchewan. So these are our costs we'll pay. You can see barbed wire permanent is $13 a meter. Electric wire permanent is $7 a meter. If you're putting temporary fence in, we'll just pay 85% of all those costs you can show us. I mentioned knowledge and tech transfer. And so Kayla's talked about how active Foothills Forage is in that. So look to them for more activities on cover crops, rotational grazing. Again, lots of opportunities to learn through field days, peer-to-peer learnings and workshops. So obviously Foothills Forage would be the place you guys watch to learn about those events. There's two main ways to connect with us. Please do reach out. And if our online system is causing you some grief or it's a challenge for you, please don't let that be a barrier. We have people who can help you sort that out. You will see a 1877 number there. You can contact us with that or the OFCAF email just below it, ofcaf.bmp@rdar.ca. We're happy to answer any questions anytime. We do right now, we are fairly swamped, but we are getting back to people within a day. A few actually take a second day, maybe 24 hours before we get back to you, but we are on top of this and happy to answer any questions you have anytime for us. Kayla, do you want to do my questions now or do you want to?
Yeah, I'm just looking here. There was no questions.
Oh. Well,
But if anybody has questions that you think of, you can put them in the chat. And then after Sonia goes, we can answer all of the questions. So If Sonia, if you want to share your screen now.
Right. Of course, the wrong one shows up. So we'll use this one right here. So good evening, everyone. My name is Sonia Shank, and I am working with Erica, the Agricultural Research and Extension Council of Alberta, and we are the delivery partner for the Canadian Forage and Grasslands Association OFCAF program, and we are only doing rotational grazing. So as Fiona mentioned, this program is an option for producers who are interested in some additional information, and I'll go through ours. You'll see that there are very similar program requirements, and that's because, of course, we're all getting the federal government funding. So as Fiona has mentioned, it's the $200 million on-farm climate action fund to work to tackle climate change in the categories of nitrogen management, cover cropping, and rotational grazing practices. CFGA, because it is forage and grassland, we are focusing on the rotational grazing. So CFGA is a national organization, and they are working for the delivery of this program within Alberta, British Columbia, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. And the only piece that they're doing is the rotational grazing BMP. One of the differences for CFGA is they have these provincial partners, which is Erica for Alberta, and we are implementing the learning events, some one-on-one training with mentors across the province, and have an on-demand learning system. So I am going to hope my link works and pops up with the course modules. So as you can see, anybody who is interested in participating in the learning management system, I'm going to pop the link into the chat. You can sign up for the access to the learning modules, and it doesn't matter if you're not applying for CFGA funding. If you're interested in going through the course, we have bits on grazing goals, grazing concepts, how to develop a grazing plan, some work on extended grazing, and some pieces on record keeping. And each one of these modules is made up of different types of content. So that you may have some videos, there may be something to read, there may be some interactive tools. And we do have advisors across the province, or mentors / advisors across the province, that we can pair you up with in order to work in terms of having a grazing club, or if you want some information on how to develop your grazing plan. We also have a piece which is the on-farm implementation, and a lot of the same bits as RDAR. There's fencing, there's water system, there's improving pastures, and as I mentioned, there's the ever popular grazing plan. If all you want out of this whole program is to have somebody sit down with you and talk about how to develop a grazing plan, there's funding specifically for that portion, which is separate from the implementation piece. As well, there's an application process. For the application for the CFGA, you have to submit a grazing plan, and this is the application, which I will try and make it a little bigger. As well, it's a fillable PDF, some basic information about you and your... Sorry, I apologize. It looks like I got the rural Alberta instability of your network. So I might close this for now, but I can provide the link in the chat after. So if producers are interested in finding this on the website, I can add that afterward. So again, similar to RDAR, we have a different portal, but same idea. You fill out the application form, the grazing plan, and upload it to the system. The eligible expenses, in order to be eligible for the program, we have a $10,000 gross income level instead of the 20. But again, you must be a primary agricultural producer, and it can be a partnership or an incorporation for Alberta, British Columbia, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. As I mentioned, for the grazing plans, we do ask the producers who need additional help, you can get it from a P.AG or a CCA or a grazing mentor. We do have the ability at the national level when reviewing these programs to ensure that they are reviewed by a P.AG. So if you don't have one in the neighborhood or you feel that you're having a hard time finding one, we are doing that at the next level of that application process. Eligible farming fencing expenses, obviously very similar. New fencing materials, it can be wildlife friendly fencing or temporary fencing. Again, very similarly, we have fencers and energizers and all of those costs in terms of new fence construction. The difference between the RDAR program and the CFGA program is there is the ability for producers to use their in-kind labor as an offset to their own their funding mechanism. So this one is funded at the 70-30 level. However, you do have the ability to use your own equipment and it doesn't all have to be custom done. We are going based on Saskatchewan rental rates. As Fiona mentioned, Alberta doesn't have one out there right now. So we're going based on those published rates. Some ineligible expenses would be panels and Texas gates. Perimeter fencing in here says does not qualify if the construction is not aligned with the grazing plan. If you are seeding some new pasture or you're rejuvenating a hayfield and your intent is to graze it, in that case, on a case-by-case basis, perimeter fence will be considered. An ineligible cost is from removing existing fencing or replacing existing fencing, and ongoing maintenance is not an eligible expense for this program. The water systems, a little bit of a difference here. We have livestock waters and remote watering system very similarly, and they have to be renewable. What we will provide is trenching of water lines, pipelines, and wet wells, and there will be some winterization of those remote systems. We also are allowing for surface pipelines instead of the shallow pipelines. Some ineligible expenses, non-renewable, so gas-powered pumps, trenching of power or trucks and trailers for water wagons, unless it is specifically part of how your cell design works in your grazing plan. In terms of pasture improvements, as Justin asked earlier, seed and seeding costs are eligible. And we can look at rejuvenating pastures with less than 25% of the legume content. We have activities in terms of including sandfoin or alfalfa to improve that forage quality. And in-kind seeding costs are based on the rates that we've already discussed in that custom rate guide. Some ineligible expenses are fertilizer and chemical applications in the process of redoing those pastures. Carbon market, RDAR and CFGA have signed the same contract with the federal government. So just so you know, the same carbon market things apply as they did in the RDAR program. So mine is super short and sweet. So I am going to give you guys back a chance to ask some questions because I saw there were a couple of things that popped up in the chat. And yes, I can mention for, I think, both programs, there is the retroactive ability to put in claims from April of 2022 for both programs. Am I correct, Fiona?
Yep, you are. For our program it is. Yep.
Yeah. So that was pretty quick and to the point for both those programs. I will find another link for producers for the CFGA information, but I'm going to leave it to Kayla to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, you can either type it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and ask them.
So for the cover crop stuff, if I hadn't planted one before on a particular field, planted one this year that was a full year cover, it's okay to swath it say for swath grazing, as long as you're allowing it to regrow and have living roots in the ground?
No, it's swath grazing. If you're cutting it and leaving just the stubble, that's not eligible because it's not providing the cover. It would be similar to a silage crop then, or any stubble crop. So the only
Okay.
thing we would pay for in that is if you wanted to fence it, you know, with electric fence or anything like that, that would be eligible. But because you're swathing it and just leaving the stubble, that's not what we would consider a cover crop.
Okay, but the cover crop I'm speaking about is actually like a lot of it regrows. So it's kind of like you seed it all at once, but some of the stuff doesn't really grow until you swath it. So in our area, we're in a pretty heavy drought, so we swathed some of the stuff to preserve quality, but we left quite a bit of stubble, and now there's regrowth underneath of some of the brassicas and legumes and stuff, right? So that was more my question was, does it still qualify in that case, or do you have to just leave it standing right through it into the winter?
Yeah, no, thanks for the clarification. So it will depend on your mix. So if you have brassicas in there, obviously that's a different than just leaving a stubble that's cut and left there. So if there are brassicas and other species like that, rooted crops, then that we would consider that a cover crop. So
Okay.
some of this isn't so easy to answer in a whole blanket. You know, we kind of look at a case by case basis. But when you give me
Yeah,
the details, then we
well,
would
that's what I
consider
wanted to
that a
ask,
cover
because there was a
crop.
few things that I thought might qualify, but then, you know, the letter of the law bullet point in there kind of thing wasn't super clear for that kind of stuff. The other thing I was wondering was for cover crops that were planted in, say, July and August after a crop was harvested, so like a traditional style cover crop, what do you still get paid back for the seed if it didn't really grow that well because of drought? Because we have some
Yeah,
of those.
for sure. You can't control that. So you still did the practice. So we're happy to do that. I think that's totally out of your control.
Yeah, little
And
tiny baby
we're not
ones.
crop insurance, so we don't look at that. Did you do it? And did you, you know, those things are out of your control. So for sure it would be a cost. And I just wanted to highlight, you made a good point there. Like the slides are for the general, like if you do have any specific questions to you guys' operations that just like Justin did there in the clarification, just give us a call or send us an email or something. Or you can just put in the application, but we could save you that if you want to have that conversation, because it's very tough to sort of get every scenario in Alberta on 4 slides. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's I just give that advice to everyone. If you're unsure, give us a call, because it's very difficult to put everything on slides, right, that suit everybody.
Thanks.
And I'm just going to answer Brittany's question. CFGA is not having a closed application. They're taking applications as they come in. So we're not saying that our application deadline is March 30th. They're doing an open call for the applications at this point.
Perfect. Does anyone else have any questions?
If not, this is going to be one of the shortest ones I've been to. We must be getting good at our job, Fiona.
Oh, well, alrighty then. Yeah, so this will be recorded and put on FFGA's website, but I will also send the link to everyone who registered. And yeah, I guess if there's no more questions, I guess we'll call her.
Hello, this is Graham here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Getting back to Justin's question there. So I've got guys that are using triticale, winter trit, and sweet clover in their swath grazing. So there's a biennial there that they'll be able to use next year. That should fall under the program of if you're swath grazing with a an annual spring cereal, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Because we've got a good few, especially in the drought areas right now, you've got those guys doing that. And then I've had to be a CCA or a P.AG sign off on these. I've had those guys call me and say, I don't know what's going on. Can you read this and let me know if it goes through? How come you have to be a CCA or a P.AG to sign off?
That's a federal requirement. I think all programs have it. So I think CFGA has it behind the scenes, but every single person who delivers this program, it's a federal requirement to have a P.AG or CCA. So it's not an RDAR decision. It's part of the program across the country for everybody who's delivering it.
Right, even if they don't know what they're talking about, they can sign off on it without recommendations.
Well, the P.AGs are supposed to stay within their scope of practice. So as like I couldn't sign off on an agronomic or a crop development question or a nitrogen one, but I could sign off on a grazing plan because that's where my area of expertise is. And you know what? Maybe find the best option that you can work with in the area. Maybe a CCA is going to be better in your area than your P.AG.
That's Graham. Graham, don't you work with Grant to work those applications through? That was my understanding.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're working together on it. But I've had a person from down at Scandia. He said, I don't understand, this producer wants me to sign off on it. Can you read it for me and see if I should sign off on it?
All I can say is there's a code of ethics and they're professional and they're supposed to be following those code of ethics. And so it's certainly not my job to make sure that they're adhering to their professional standards. They sign up for it and they're supposed to follow that ethics. So I really can't comment on why they would do that. That's not really what their code of ethics says. So I guess there's those in every crowd. That's about all I can say about it.
Yeah, no, it just seems like they've been thrown into this and the producers say, can you sign off? And then they kind of worried about what they're looking at. So they get someone else like Grant and myself to look at it. Thank you.
The only thing else I would add to that I didn't include because of the crowd I thought was here, I didn't talk to our P.AG and CCA training. We do actually have certified micro-credential courses that we're developing with Lakeland and Olds College on all these three categories of nitrogen management, cover crops, and rotational grazing. So I bring that up, Graham, because that might fill that gap for people who are struggling with the grazing part of it. It will certainly help them get some more understanding, and they'll have to do actually an exam and everything to get those credentials. So that might fill the gap.
Yep. Right, thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Jerry.
So it's retroactive back to April for cover crops. Like I planted a bunch of cover crops, you know, into April. Is there a date for the receipt, or is it for when it's actually planted, or that's just in the details there? But I was curious on that.
Yeah, it's retroactive to April 1st, but receipts have to be April 1st. We can't go across government fiscal years with our budget because the program was only announced in, I think, March or something, but we can't go. So if you bought the seed before April 1st, we couldn't approve that. But if you bought it in April, it would be an eligible cost for sure.
Okay, thank you.
There was a question there in the chat from Brittany.
Yeah, so Brittany asked, can we apply for OFCAF funding for water projects related to rotational grazing that we have already obtained funding for from CAP?
Sonia, you want me to answer that, or are you gonna answer?
Well, I can take it. If depending on what you have received from CAP, if it's the distribution, if it's the building of the well or the dugout, but not the distribution, you can apply for the distribution piece of that water supply. You can't, as we've already discussed, you can't double dip. So if that project's already been paid for by federal, it's for the underground pipeline. That would then go back to either or. If you've got, so you're looking for distribution into the other paddocks, is it for the rotational grazing?
You want to just
Sorry,
unmute
Brittany.
Brittany, maybe?
No, she's got, yes. Yeah, if you've got just the basic water source already paid for from CAP, you can apply of that water for that rotational grazing piece. I hope that answers the question.
So you can't stack government dollars on government dollars to reach over 100%. So we do have stacking limits on provincial government, municipal government, and federal government dollars. And so it will be kind of depending on what you got paid for there, but you cannot stack. So if you got 50, say 30% from the CAP program, which is a Fed province program, you definitely wouldn't be able to apply for us for 85% on top of that. So there is stacking costs in our programs, in everyone's program. We all sign the same agreement, so you cannot stack provincial dollars, county dollars, and federal dollars on top of each other to obviously exceed 100%.
Excuse me, yes, I wanted to go back to the grass seeding, interseeding up to improve pasture. Did I understand right that it was limited to a legume? Like sainfoin or alfalfa?
So I can take it from our program. You can talk to yours, Sonia. So for us, no, legumes has to be 50%, but it doesn't have to be only legume for us.
Okay, so I can also use other grass plant seed is all I was wondering, whether I could get a mix of sainfoin.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, and it's the same for CFGA as long as you are increasing the content. So if you have a crop that's already has less than 25 or has 25% legumes, and you want to put additional things in to rejuvenate it, yes, but we are looking for a legume, an increased legume content in that pasture. So I'm not saying go in and only seed with alfalfa or only go in and seed with sainfoin. Obviously that doesn't work for everybody, but it's to increase the legume content.
Okay, so the price of this, the other seed that I would put with that legume, would that be covered under this? That's what I was asking, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what CFGA will do about that one.
Okay.
Just because if it's a rejuvenation, they're looking at trying to increase that forage, that legume content for the storage of decreased carbon output.
Great. Okay, thank you.
For us, it would be eligible. We'd look at it for sure.
Okay.
We have another, well, Brittany just put in the chat, we received 25% up to max of 5,000 from CAP. So could we apply under CFGA for the remaining 75%? Or is application under one program the limit? We've already received funding for the distribution under CAP, but their cap is a total of 5,000 compensation, which doesn't even come close to what we spent.
I guess part of it is also going to depend on when the construction occurred. And I would say you can always submit an application. They are looking at it on a case-by-case basis. I don't think that, you know, depending on what that eligible expense is, they would review it. And that would have to come back, I think, to looking at what they can stack for federal dollars. So I don't know if that helps or not, Brittany, but we will do our best if we can, because I understand that the distribution definitely is not the cheap part.
Well, I don't think there's any more questions. Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap it up then. So yeah, this will be sent out tomorrow, the recording, in case you wanted to rewatch it or you missed something. It'll also be on our website. So thank you guys for joining.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.